Okay, I'm out here in my pasture here. I got my favorite goat Ruby here coming up, giving me a little love. She's always right with me, trying to see what's going on and thinking I might have a little extra food. Anyway, what I'm here to share about, okay, I'm out here in my pasture the first week of October. I just wanted to make a point to some goat farmers that they don't realize is happening this time of year. You know, I put a little bit of grain out every morning for my goats. Keep them friendly, wanting to come to me, and it's good for them. But they always tussle and fight and try to get in on the grain. But in the last couple weeks, they've been a lot more aggressive, fighting to get into it, and they really wanted it more than normal. And so I was like, yep, it's that time of year. And what I mean by that time of year is simply this: the trees are starting to go dormant, even though there's still some leaves on the trees, and well, the blackberry bushes keep their leaves all year, and even the grass stays green around here most of the year. All of those plants, to varying levels, are taking the nutrients up in the leaves and running it down the trunk and into the ground and into the roots, and they're storing that energy and the nutrients for the winter. So even though there's still leaves out there, my goats have plenty of access to plenty of blackberries and plenty of other plants, and the grass is still plenty tall here. But even though it's out there, it's not as nutrient dense, and as the weeks go on, it's going to be even less and less nutrient dense. So you think, oh man, there's a lot of forage for them, but there is a lot of forage, but there's not as many calories and there's not as much nutrients. So this time of year, you're probably going to start needing to put some more grain out, put some more minerals, put vitamins out for them, and meet their calorie needs and their nutrient needs. Okay, the same thing happens at the other end of the year in the spring, at the start of the year, when the nutrients start coming up, especially fir trees. I have some Doug fir trees here on my neighbor's property that my goats are running, and they really like to tear into the fir tree bark come March. Okay, and I have a branch here. This is a tree that I had to cut out, and I knew the goats were going to love it in March. So the sap is coming back up the tree right underneath the bark and sending nutrients back up to the leaves. So I cut this tree down and I threw these sections in here in March, and you can see, I know it's a little bit weathered now because it's been laying out here all summer, but there is not a bit of bark on this branch, on this tree anywhere. Okay, the goats just stripped every last bit of bark. They ate the bark and they got into the sap and they licked it all up and they enjoyed it immensely. So if I tore branches down and cut branches down later in the year, even after April, like into May, the goats will still get in and eat the needles off and whatnot, but they don't as aggressively eat the bark because the nutrients has already come up through the bark and gone back out. So my neighbors, as I mentioned, he wants us grazing his pasture, and one time he came over and said, your goats, they're like dang beavers, they're eating my trees down. And that was again in March. So we went out and wrapped fencing just around the trees to keep them off the bark so they couldn't get up. Fortunately, I have Nigerian dwarfs, so they're not too tall, so we just wrapped it around the trees to protect them. And they still tried to fight through the fencing and get on the bark until about mid-April. And then after that, they kind of lost interest, both because the grass and the blackberries had more nutrients in it, but the bark wasn't nearly as sweet. So if you're trying to protect your trees, you know, that March, April time of year, especially around here, the goats are really going to try to get in on them. They will try to get in on them any time of year if they can tear the bark off and they don't have a lot of food. But specifically that time of year, they really want it. So you got to protect your trees. I was filming this by myself, but as I was filming, my crew, there's part of my crew, has come back from over the hill. They've been grazing at the neighbor's property. They're coming back home, getting ready for the evening, heading to the barn.